How I got to doing research really started from a sort of circuitous route where I was actually originally interested in being a veterinarian. And part of the reason for that was I grew up in a very rural area of upstate New York, and I had a lot of pets, and I just felt like I wanted to take care of animals. I loved animals. So I went to college as a biology major in a small upstate New York college, also in a very rural area, and thought that I would be a vet. And when I got there, I had a biochemistry professor who was interested in and brought up the fact that I could do research with him. And while it was a very small school, and so we didn't have sort of big research, the research he was working on was more around developing better labs for undergraduates, but I really caught the research bug when I started working on that, and just decided that I loved the ability to be able to ask a question or think about a question and then go into the lab and figure out a way to answer it. The sort of independence around that, the ability to do whatever you want to do and to ask important questions, I really liked all that and had no idea that you could have a career in that space. So by the time I ended undergraduate, I really thought, okay, graduate school is for me and I want to go into research. But it wasn't until I hit graduate school that I really thought about cancer research. And part of that was just really, I went into labs that were doing cancer-related research and got really excited about the questions, and they're really difficult questions, but they're really important questions. And that is, cancer is a disease of self, and it's when your own cells sort of go awry. And so developing ways or finding out ways that you can target the cancer without targeting normal cells is very difficult. And this is why lots of people have side effects from cancer treatments. And like many other people, I've known people and have had people in my family that have had cancer. So I felt like if I could combine this love for science and being able to ask questions and explore and have this independence with trying to answer a question that was really important, that would be the perfect career for me. And so that's how I got into the cancer research space. So I think one of the biggest challenges that I faced was really just the lack of female role models as I was going through this career trajectory. Particularly when I was a postdoctoral fellow. I was at Harvard Medical School, Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, which is a great place to do science and really enjoyed it. But there were probably 3 that I could count that were women, that were full professors that had made it that far. My mentor was terrific, and his wife was actually one of those 3 faculty members, which was really nice because then I did have a woman role model, but she had really given up a lot to become a scientist. And so I kept worrying that you're unable to be a scientist and a woman and have a family and do all that and still be able to run a high-power research lab, etc. The good news is I was still encouraged by the people I did have as role models. And when I got to Colorado, I feel like the environment here is just changed so incredibly much. I mean, I think there's still ceilings that women feel or experience, or the fact that I just recently checked, 52% of our cancer center leaders are women. I think that hopefully now women who come up in this field no longer feel like they don't have women role models, and I hope I can serve as one. I mean, I've had a family, my kids are grown up now and out of the house, but I did all that as a faculty member, and I think it can be done and is actually a great career, and things have changed a lot. So I think that was a challenge, but I'm glad I overcame it and hope we can change that for the next generation. So I guess one of the things I would tell myself is not to beat myself up so much about not being perfect at everything I wanted to do from the get-go. When you move from being a postdoc to taking a faculty position, all of a sudden you are running a small business. You have to you're mentoring people, students and postdocs. You have to run the finances of the lab. There's just all these things that nobody really taught you how to do that you have to take over. And I beat myself up a lot about not knowing how to do that or doing that as well as I could have to begin with. And I think I would tell myself, number one, find a mentor right away, which I did, but it took me a bit to figure that out. And don't sweat it if you don't know how to do everything perfectly. You will learn along the way and have fun learning along the way, and at the end of the day, it'll all work out well. The other thing I might tell myself is not to take criticism so hard. So I think another thing in academic science is that a lot of the feedback that you get is constructive criticism. So you get a lot of criticism about your grants and your papers and other things you're doing, and it's generally meant positively and to help you. But oftentimes, especially when you're first starting, you just feel like everyone's against you. And so I think if you can take that in and take that criticism and help it make you better, without letting it get you down, that's also really important. It took me a while to learn all those things, but I think that's what I would tell my former self if I could. So outside of work, I, like a lot of people in Colorado, I think, love the outdoors. I'm more of a hiker than a skier, though. I like to ski, but I like warmer weather better, so I love to hike. I also really love to read. I spend some of my time reading sort of nonfiction, scientific related things that I'm interested in, but I also do quite a bit of reading of novels and fiction, just to have something to escape from the everyday, what you're thinking about all day. And so I really enjoy doing that. I enjoy spending time with my family when they're around, because again, they're all over the place now. And I used to really enjoy playing the violin, but once I had kids and I had a faculty position, it was hard to balance all that, so I've kind of put that away for a while. But I'm planning to pick that up now that I'm an empty nester, so hopefully I'll pick that up again. So lots of different things, I think, to keep me busy. I'm generally busy, and I like to stay that way. So my extended family is all over the world. My mother lives in France, my brother lives and his family live in France. My sister lives in Mexico. I don't really have a lot of family except my immediate family in this country. And so when I think about this, it's hard for me to pinpoint one holiday that I prefer over another. And I would say what I prefer the most, or what's the most favorite for me, is when there's a holiday where I can get together with my whole family. Yeah, so that's a really important question, because I think a lot of us who do basic cancer research can get so caught up in the details of the very what some people might think are minute details, so they're very important, but things to understand that they're not. You often lose that perspective of why are you doing this, and we have over time we've interacted quite a bit with advocates, and I've really watched it make a big difference. So an example I can give you is quite a few years ago, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I got a grant from a foundation called Mediviver, which is a foundation that specifically funds people working in metastatic breast cancer research. What they did is they had stage 4 metastatic breast cancer patients who were running this foundation. And after they gave out the grants, they rented a bus and drove across the country and went to each site where they had given a grant and went to visit each PI. And so they came to my lab with a whole number of stage 4 metastatic breast cancer patients. And we had a day where I got all my lab members together and we met with these patients. And it was so impactful just to talk to them, to hear about their stories, to hear about the things that they think are important that we need to think about. Things like the side effects they get from drugs, or the fact that there's much less funding in trying to understand the metastatic disease than there is the primary cancer, and so many patients are living with metastatic disease. And everybody went back to the lab reinvigorated. Everybody felt more purpose for what they were doing. And so after that experience, I really realized we need to have many interactions with advocates. It's important for us to constantly keep that perspective. And so I will say, even now, just very recently, one of my students got an award to go to a meeting in London. It was the Metastasis Research Society meeting, where part of the award was specific to him meeting with an advocate at the meeting, then them getting together and talking about, again, issues in metastasis research, et cetera. And then they wrote a blog afterwards together about their perspectives, the advocate's perspective on how meeting with a researcher changes her way of thinking about things, and my student's perspective on how it changed his ways of thinking. And so we involve them in grants and involve my students and my trainees in activities where they can meet with advocates, because again, I think having that perspective to what you're doing really changes how you think about every day coming into the lab. The first piece of advice would be, you really have to know that's what you want to do. And you have to be, I think, at a stage in your career where you are willing to put others ahead of yourself. So, I think you should explore that along the way, right? So if you're a more junior faculty member and you'd like to get into leadership positions, doing things like being an assistant to a leader in the cancer center, for example, or going to leadership. There are a lot of leadership trainings now. There weren't back when I started, but there are a lot now that you can do. For example, I did one, which was just a couple of years ago, Executive Leadership in Academic Medicine, and that's a women's leadership program that's national, and that was really great just to get to talk to other people and their experiences before I decided to take on the types of leadership roles I have. But along the way, I've sort of taken on smaller leadership roles that have led to bigger ones, and I think that allowed me to know that I'm at the stage in my career where I'm ready to try to build and give back and mentor. I love mentoring, so I think if you love sort of watching other people be successful and helping them be successful, and then that's the kind of thing for you. But I think it's really, my advice would be to explore that, because you definitely want to be at a place where you're still not worried about building your own research program and you have to do that. There's a point in your career where that's really important, but there's also a point in your career where it's time to sort of give back. And if that's something you like to do and you really get satisfaction out of that, then my advice would be go for it, but explore it along the way. So probably what most people don't know about me, although I sort of alluded to this a little bit earlier, is that I play the violin, and so I actually was offered a scholarship to go to college to go into music. And I don't know that I've shared that with much of anyone, so I'm not sure anyone knows. But I decided that while I love music, that wasn't the thing I wanted to do full-time for a job. And so I made the decision to go into research instead, and I'm very happy I did so. I'd love to pick up my music again, but I turned down a full ride to not get a full ride, but it was the right decision for me.